everyone. Welcome. Thanks for coming out on such a rainy, nasty night. I know we probably all want to be in our pajamas cozy at home, so it means a lot to have you here. We're here at the Kentwood branch at KDL for our final presentation in our series called Living Better in West Michigan, A Global Health Perspective, which is presented by the World Affairs Council of Western Michigan in collaboration with Kent District Library. I'm Erica Kubik. I'm the Director of Programming for the Council, and on behalf of my colleagues Rachel Brooks, Abigail Stead, and Michael Van Denen, as well as the Board of Directors, thank you and welcome to you all. Our mission is to empower the people and organizations of West Michigan to engage thoughtfully with the world, and to change the world, we believe you must first know the world. So you can learn more about what we do at worldmichigan.org. Tonight, we'll say a special thank you to our friends at Kent District Library, who annually partner with us to provide this free informational resource to the West Michigan community. And as I said, thank you all for being in the audience tonight. As we engage in the topic of global health, I think it's important to remember the power of community and connection for juice and cookies after the presentation, so stay for a few minutes and have a chat with people in the audience so that we can feel Human Resources at KDL, who will share what's happening at the library.
Thank you very much. It is altogether appropriate that we're here at Kent District Library despite the weather, right? I mean, no doubt you were somewhere an hour ago saying, am I still going to that thing tonight, you know, with this weather like this? But you're here because this matters, because education matters, because the opportunity to engage in our community with fellow citizens like this over an array of topics with partners such as the World Affairs Council matters a lot to us. So I just want to thank you all for being here, and thank you for supporting Kent District Library. We're pleased to introduce Dr. Charles Young, Chair of Medicine at Michigan State University School of Medicine. Dr. Charles Hung, also known as Chaz, is a physician, scientist, entrepreneur, chair of the Department of Medicine, and foundation professor at Michigan State University's College of Human Medicine. He is a pioneer in the field of chemical genetics of embryonic development. His research discoveries were cited in his election to the American Society for Clinical Investigation and the American Association for the Advancement of Science Fellow, and also laid the McKinnick's Foundation for treatment of venous malformation syndromes with P13K inhibitors. There's going to be a test after this. His later invention of dysmorphin, the first small molecular inhibitor of bone morphogenetic protein signaling, has reshaped our understanding of this pathway in embryonic development and disease processes, spurring clinical stage drug development programs for anemia of chronic disease and other devastating disorders. A graduate of the MD-PhD program from Yale, Dr. Hung completed his clinical cardiology training at Massachusetts General Hospital, followed by a postdoc in chemical biology at Harvard Medical School. Prior to coming to MSU in 2023, he was on faculty at Harvard Medical School, Vanderbilt University School of Medicine, where he directed its Inherited Heart Disease Center, and University of Maryland School of Medicine, where he was Melvin Sharoky Professor of Medicine. Medicine Department of Medicine at this transformative period with exciting opportunities in discovery, innovation, education, and patient care. His vision is to help make MSU a dynamic innovator in academic medicine, attracting and developing future leaders who will transform the innovation landscape across Michigan and build a more just and healthy society. As a fellow Spartan, I want to say go green. Thank you. After his presentation this evening, there will be ample time for questions. Please exhibit civility to our guests and hospitality to others by asking respectful and succinct questions. The presentation tonight is titled Training for Impact, How Medical Schools Shape Community and Global Health. Let's welcome Dr. Hung to the stage.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I think it just means that I didn't get a real job until I was 40. So it takes a long journey. So I'm really honored to be here with you in this weather. And I want to share what medical school can do for the local community, what it can do for the global world. I don't have a big vision. This is like my fourth version. I didn't know what to say, but hopefully this will resonate with the audience here. So, I'm going to start with Renaissance. It's an odd topic for this world, this room. But Renaissance sparked a revolution in everything we know: arts, sciences, politics, and religion. And we know that if you go to the museums, they were the first ones to have actually three-dimensional perspective, really a technical breakthrough in artistic. But there are also technological breakthroughs in terms of expression. Also intellectual shifts. Really, we began to see who we are as an individual. And scientific advancements, of course, and religious and political changes. And it was a profound age of discovery and globalization. And it's really important because I'm here dressed like this, and I'm because of what happened in Renaissance, right? It changed the world. If you think about it, this was the first global movement that impacted all the world. In the past, when the world got together, it was usually about killing each other and wars. But Renaissance was the first time where ideas spread like wildfire. And if it wasn't for the Renaissance scientists who said, hey, let's think about this critically. Let's start asking questions. Our life expectancy will be still around 40 years old, 40, rather than approaching 90. So if you think about how revolutionary this Renaissance was, I just want to plant that notion there. And it all started in Florence, Italy. And if you actually go visit Florence, you're struck by how small the city is. There's about 1.5 million people in Florence, barely a train station. Well, compared to that, Grand Rapids is actually 1.2 million. And I've heard that Grand Rapids is now #1 city, growing city, but according to Forbes magazine. So it's a comparable size. Probably in 20 years, Grand Rapids will eclipse Florence and be a larger and richer city. But what made Florence, what was so special about Florence, right? Why did this not happen in Beijing? Why did this not happen anywhere else? But why did it happen in Florence? And the beauty of Florence is that it was actually dominated, the politics and economy were dominated by a family called Medicis. And if you actually try to study who the Medicis were, nobody really knows where they came from. They just climbed down from the mountains and hills and then started running businesses and banks. That's how it starts. If you ask them, where did the Florence come from? The Medicis come from? Nobody knows. They just came from mountains or hills surrounding the Florence. But one of the things that they did really well, this picture, is this is one of my favorite rooms. They have multiple palaces in Florence. And if you look at this picture, they're actually, at the end of the day, if you go to their palace, they're the hoarders of art. They love hoarding, right? I'm being if you go to Vatican, you could tell the popes love hoarding, right? But these are hoarding of objects. But it's not just hoarding of the objects. They brought animals. If you look at this picture, they look at camels and even I think elephants are in there. But you could also see a variety of different people who are from Africa, from Asia. They brought people from mathematicians from Northern Africa. They brought physicians from Middle East. They brought chemists from India. They just love talent. So they didn't just hoard objects. They hoarded talent. They hoarded artists from all over the world, right? If you think about Michelangelo, they didn't actually come from Florence, but they were recruited to Florence. And the beauty of what happened in Florence is that artists and engineers were working side by side. All the new technologies and pigments that were being developed, they were actually applied next door to make an art. So it didn't happen by accident. They brought these people all together. So there's actually a book called Medici Effect. The idea of this book, it's actually maybe 10, 15 years old, is disruptive innovations when occur, diverse disciplines, ideas, and cultures intersect. And that's what libraries are for, right? I mean, you go to Florence, they have a pretty impressive libraries because Medici's cared about this stuff. It was intentional. And so when I think about what Michigan State is, it's all about intersections. We want to do the same things. If you think about our medical school, we have 8 different campuses. I remember coming here from a typical traditional academic medical center. I said, what is this place? I'm trying to still figure this place out. But we want to be that intersection. We want to be the Medicis of Michigan. And what does that mean? How can we, medical school, help bring diverse teams of people together from UP to Midland to Traverse City, Grand Rapids. Grand Rapids is our biggest campus, to Detroit, Lansing, all over the country. How can we bring together diverse people? And can we create intersections and synergies just like the Medicis did during the Florence Renaissance period? And the interesting thing is that when I actually come by, there's a medical mile down the road. And the idea is very similar. I'm not sure whether the Grand Rapids folks decided that we're going to build Florence, but the idea is people made some pretty spectacular investments in the city. So you have this medical mile here, and then that's the medical school. Our camp headquarters are over there, and that you can see the headquarters there. And then downstream, we built 2 buildings to complement the buildings that are in there, whether it be Helen DeVos, Van Andel, or Cornwall Hospital. It's all nearby. The whole idea is that it's probably a mile, and we're probably building more. We have Doug Meyer Medical Innovation Building, we have the Grand Rapids Research Center, and I heard there's plans for maybe a 3rd one as well. So this is a really exciting place to be. And so as a chairman of medicine, this is sort of like what I had to figure out what we want to be. And it's interesting, I gave a job talk for this thing 2 years ago, and I was looking through my slides, and the plan actually didn't change. It was kind of gratifying that I came here for a purpose, and the dean didn't say, no, we don't want you, we got you here, but we want you to do something else. He allowed me to do what I wanted to do, why I came here. And we want to make intersections. So these are the strategic initiatives. We want to build up research. Because Michigan State has it's a huge enterprise. We're not just a Big Ten university, it's a Big Ten with a big B. We do about $1 billion of extramural research, one of the tops in the world. And nearby, we could actually have a drug discovery #1, nuclear physics. We have one of the nicest engineering schools in the country. And then nearby, we have Van Andel Institute, which is a very impressive research enterprise. And then we want to use that research as an engine to innovate medical education. And as you know, this is our single biggest campus of Michigan State Medical School. And then we're going to actually enable healthcare innovations in Grand Rapids through our clinical partners, such as Corewell Health and Trinity Health. And I have to put this because this is from Forbes magazine. Grand Rapids is #1 in the country in terms of job creation. It's kind of a cool place to be. And how are we going to do that? And I want to build bridges through partnerships and through strategic recruitments of talent. So I want to be like Medici's, bring people here from all over the world, bring the best people here and put them together so that we could actually catalyze something big in Grand Rapids. And my area of focus, I'm a cardiologist, I'm a heart doctor. I don't really know much about cancer, but one of the initiatives that we decided to do is let's focus on cancer. And this is a book by a friend of mine called Emperor of Maladies. That's what ancient Egyptians called cancer, Emperor of Maladies, because it's miserable. And it's number one cause of death among people 85 or under. So as a cardiologist, I would like to brag, heart disease is number one cause of death. But it's not. In this room, number one cause of death is cancer. Heart disease is a disease of the older, if you actually look at the numbers. And it's one of the most tough disease to have because one of the financial hits that we take when you get cancer is pretty just as bad as the disease itself. Oops. But luckily, cancer deaths are preventable. And this is a really interesting data. At one time, cervical cancer was the number one cause of death among women. And then something magical happened here, and then it just plummeted. And cervical cancer is now completely curable disease, completely preventable disease. So what happened? I just want to give you a story of triumph of science, triumph of medical science. Pap smear came along around 1928. The whole idea is that you could actually detect changes before people get cancer. And that single discovery led to this plummeting of cervical cancer death rate throughout the world. And then people realized that cervical cancers are caused by papillomavirus. Now we have vaccines against papillomavirus. So this cancer is one cancer that we'll probably be able to eradicate in our lifetime. It's pretty amazing, spectacular success. And that's an example where, doctors are often wrong. I am often wrong. Disease is humbling. Human beings are humbling. But this is one example where science-based doctors were right. They were absolutely right, and the evidence is there. Another interesting thing is here. This is a lung cancer. And it's interesting, males were dying of lung cancer much, much more than females. It's an interesting data. So similarly, what happened here? What happened? Something dramatic happened in the 1980s. Okay? What happened was the Surgeon General warnings started coming out around the 70s, right? And all the non-smoking things. I remember this was controversial in the 80s, if you remember, right? It's like taking away people's right to smoke, right? I remember when I was a kid, not a kid, even as a young adult, people sat in the back of the plane smoking, right? And so that single thing is responsible for plummeting of lung cancer in America. And so this is another example where, doctors are not always wrong. As long as we're based on science and facts, we can be right and we can make a big difference. And so we've also had treatment breakthroughs. I'm from Michigan State, and Michigan State is one of the worst colleges when it comes to bragging about itself. So let me do the bragging for you, for Michigan State. Lance Armstrong is alive today because of Michigan State. He had a stage 4 testicular cancer with a mets to his brain. And he got treated. He actually had kids afterwards. And he won 7 Tour de France's with a little help from his friends. But the fact that he lived in itself is pretty amazing. And that's because he was treated with this drug called cisplatin. Single most successful chemotherapy agent of all time. Single most therapy. And that happened at Michigan State, thanks to Barnett Rosenberg, Loretta Van Camp, and Nikolai Dimitrov. He's in our department, in Department of Medicine. And I was shocked how many people didn't even know he was in our department. We got to change that narrative. Michigan State has been kind of kick-ass good. And they discovered cisplatin. And get this, cure rate for testicular cancer went from, basically, let's flip it this way, 95% of people with testicular cancer in 1974 died within 5 years. Now, hardly anybody dies of testicular cancer now. It's 95% cure rate now. Think about this. We flipped cancer on its head, right? And so this is a remarkable story of triumph of medical school, how we make difference that transcends not just Michigan, but throughout the world. But not all cancers are currently treatable. This is a pancreatic cancer. And mainly because, well, actually we don't really know. I don't pretend to know why it's such a lethal cancer. But a lot of people we know that we care about died of pancreatic cancer. These are just the people that I kind of pulled out from the web. It's one of the lethal cancers we could get. And it's driven by activating mutations in a gene called KRAS. And we are working on finding the Achilles heel of pancreatic cancers. And there have been RAS inhibitors to inhibit this process because it's very logical. If you have activation of this gene, if you have a drug that inhibits it, of course it's going to be cured, right? But yes, it is a cure, but it turns out that cancers are smart. They develop downstream activation. And so doctors are just as smart, so it's like an arms race. So we developed this drug that blocks the downstream mediators of KRAS. But then again, the cancers are smart. There are all these other pathways get activated downstream of KRAS. And so there's an arms race happening right now. We are actually actively developing drugs. And this particular drug is very close to my heart because my wife's best friend has ovarian cancer due to mutations in KRAS. And she's actually getting this therapy right now. But the problem with cancer is that it's smart. It keeps coming up with new, as soon as we come up with something, cancer comes up with another way to get around it. So how do we get around to it? And really a breakthrough is that these two scientists, Jenny Klump and Jeff Klump, have made a back-to-back science papers showing that at the end of the day, what's really important is activation of ERK. Cancer cells really don't care how it gets activated, whether it's KRAS, BRAF, or MEK, or whatever. At the end, what he wants to do is activate ERK. And so they're actually developing a therapy using any means necessary. At the end, what they want to do is block ERK because they realize that that's the key driver of pancreatic cancers. And this is a breakthrough in Science magazine, back to back, that even the NIH director noticed back in 2024. It's considered a breakthrough. These are the stars of the whole country, and we recruited them to Michigan State. So it's a big catch. They're in Grand Rapids. And here's why. It turns out that they're from Grand Valley State alums, both of them. Okay? So when I said, would you like to come back to Michigan? And they said, yes. So we beat Harvard's, we beat all the other universities, and we brought them to Michigan State in Grand Rapids. So if I retire, this is my singular achievement for Michigan State. Very proud. And then could there be other Achilles heel of cancers? And cancer cells are highly metabolically active creatures because that's why when you get cancer, you get totally wasted because cancers are very greedy, food greedy. They're just destructive in that way. And so they're like nuclear submarines. They just need tons of energy. But power, just like nuclear power, is very valuable, but it's also very dangerous. And so we know that somehow cancer cells are, like their metabolism, it's almost like a nuclear submarine, but it's actually leaking. So it's having a nuclear meltdown as the cancer cells are growing. But somehow the cancer cells are protected from this nuclear meltdown that's actually within it. Normal cells with the same kind of nuclear meltdown would be dead. But the cancer cells have figured out how to survive that process. And is there protective signaling? What is that protective signaling that keeps the cancer cells? And so this is what we call the Warburg effect. He actually won a Nobel Prize in 1931. He actually discovered it exactly 100 years ago. And the whole process is that normal cells use glucose, sugar, to generate ATP by a process called oxidative phosphorylation. Cancer cells, instead of going through, well, in addition to going through oxidative phosphorylation, it goes through what you call glycolysis, even in the presence of oxygen. Glycolysis is a process that you get these Charlie horses from. When you don't have enough oxygen, but you use up too much energy, it builds up that lactate. That's what gives you pain. But cancer cells go through that even in regular resting state. And so the process is called the Warburg effect, because in the old days, people named cool stuff after themselves. And this is the way we detect cancers in a PET scan. So when we detect cancer cells, the tracers that we use is glucose, because cancer cells are so glucose hungry. So this is what you use a PET scan, and you use a FDG labeled glucose, and the glucose goes straight to the cancer cells. But another byproduct of this Warburg effect is that lactate gets kicked out along with protons. So the cancer cells, cancer tumor milieu, is slightly acidic than normal pH. Normal pH is about 7.4. Cancer cells are about 6.4. It's a little bit lower. So they're a little bit more acidic than regular tumors. And people have known that for a while. And it was never been proven, but postulated that this is why the cancer cells thrive. It's somehow protective. It protects against cancer chemotherapy, protects against radiation therapy. It promotes metastases. And most importantly, it allows tumor immune escape. And there are two cancers that are resistant to checkpoint inhibitors that you might have heard. A magical thing that cured Jimmy Carter when he had melanoma, checkpoint inhibitors. It doesn't work on pancreatic cancers. It doesn't work on brain cancers because it's thought that those tumors are very acidic. So I recruited with me Chuck Williams, who's a junior faculty with us. And he and I have discovered a new pathway. Basically, it's a proton receptor. It turns out that protons, there's a receptor in our body that senses protons. It activates a cancer cell survivor pathway. I'm just giving you a cartoon version of it. But we've also discovered this inhibitor called ogomorphin, OGM for short, that blocks this pathway. In return, leads to a novel programmed cell death called ferroptosis. And the beauty of this is that because normal cells don't care about protons, it only selectively kills cancer cells. So it's a very exciting way. This is just an example. I'm still continuing to recruit. We're going to recruit more basic scientists. And we're going to recruit doctors who do research. We are working with Cornwall and Van Andel and the Pediatrics Hospital, Helen DeVos, to recruit scientists. So that for the first time, we're going to have MDs who actually see patients. When they come to Grand Rapids, they will wear a green and white badge. But when they walk across the bridge and start seeing patients, they will wear a Cornwall badge. It's a very nice partnership and agreement that we have with them. And we want to build teams to bring cures quickly, starting with Grand Rapids. And this is a story of brain cancers. It's 100% fatal. And because when the brain cancer comes back, even after you carve it out, when it comes back, it becomes resistant to any known therapy. So it is a pretty grim prognosis. You live about 15 months. And our drug that we developed with Chuck Williams is about 100 times more potent than mainline therapy called temozolomide, TMZ for short. And also sensitizes cancer cells. So they work together in concert to kill cancer cells. It works not just together with chemotherapy, but it also works with radiation therapy as well. So it synergizes. It's a very exciting work. And the really amazing thing about this work is that so far, this is just a sample, so far we have not found a single brain cancer cell, glioblastoma cells, that are resistant to our drug. Even the brain cancer cells that are resistant to chemotherapy are sensitive to our compound. So it's a very exciting discovery. And so MSU actually posted us, 3 of us, that's Leif, me, and Chuck together as a news release. And then soon afterwards, Will Burns, who's now he's a junior in MSU, reached out to us. And he brought him, that's Will right there, and then his mom. His mom has glioblastoma. And she's that certain window, it's been less than a year. And she's actually doing well so far. And so, he asked us, can you do something for my mom? I was like, no, we don't have it ready yet. This is for probably people who will get brain cancer in the future. But the process of drug discovery takes a decade or more. So it probably won't help your mom. But they were very nice. They said, we still want to see your facility. We just want to visit you. And so they become really good friends of us. And this is where global impact can happen. It turns out that Will is a pretty spectacular young man. And he's become a really tremendous advocate. So he's a major in packaging. He's not a science major. He's not a pre-med. But where his talent is advocacy. And he was actually quoted in one of the articles saying, taking away the money is awful, but you take away hope. I think it's a really powerful statement. So for me, this is what an impact is. You don't have to be a scientist or a doctor to have an impact in the world. Because right now we're going through a funding cuts. And so things are a little uncertain. So to have somebody, a young man, who advocate for us, it's like God sent. And there's another story, my personal story. This is my high school teacher, Miss Slaughter, and she was a biology teacher. And she really encouraged me to go into medicine and sciences. She was my 10th grade biology teacher, so I still keep in touch with her. So she's been an amazing advocate and encourager for us, for me. And then in middle of medical school, I ran out of money. So I went to medical school 40 years ago. If you remember 40 years ago, interest rates were very high. So you didn't go to medical school and you didn't take out a loan. You paid for everything. It's very different than now, right? So when my parents ran out of money, they said, can you take a year off? So I said, yeah, I guess I was supposed to. The thought of taking out a loan to go to medical school was foreign. People forget how high the interest rates were back in the 80s. And so, and out of the blue, this man, Dr. Sarnoff, the reason why I show that is that he was also an entrepreneur. He's the guy who discovered EpiPen. He didn't discover EpiPen for allergies. He developed for something else. But everybody goes like EpiPen happened overnight. No, if you actually look at the history, the guy's been working on for 20 years, 30 years before first person was actually cured with EpiPen. But with the money that he got from EpiPen, he paid for my medical school. He's actually passed away of pancreatic cancer, but he was also my mentor. I took a year off that year, ran out of money, so I did research for a year. And after a year of research, he basically said, hey, Chaz, I think you should do this for a living. And up to that point, I thought I went to medical school to be a doctor, not a scientist, right? But he's also a doctor, and he said, hey, you could be like me. You could do research. I think you got the knack for it. And I said, wow, am I that good? It's like, no, nothing worked for you the whole year, but you seem to enjoy it. So this is what you should do. And literally, that single word of saying you should consider it changed my life, right? And so I've been choosing medicine ever since. And because of that, later on, I discovered how artery and veins are made distinct. It turns out that arteries, our blood vessels, come from common progenitor. They're kind of undifferentiated. And then during the development, there are certain sets of blood vessels that become arteries, and certain sets of blood vessels become veins. And if you look at anatomy courses, they all track along together. Okay? And it turned out that I developed a PI3 kinase. I don't dare to pronounce what that kinase is. I just call it PI3 kinase. And using that kinase, I could shift the fate of veins to more arteries. And that led to the realization that PI3 kinase was an essential enzyme involved in formation of veins. And then another flip side is that ERK, as you remember, ERK is one of the things that are important for cancers. At least in blood vessels, it doesn't cause cancers, but it actually tips them in the favor of arteries. And that discovery led to my being elected to this prestigious society. That's sort of my claim to fame. But what are the clinical impact? When I did this work, it was just kind of curious. I had a lot of good time. But then subsequently, many years later, people begin to realize that there are people walking around with these venous malformation syndromes. You might have seen some of them. They're pretty rare. But this person is just, the whole leg is swollen up because instead of normal tissues, it's been growth of veins. So this person is veins. And basically, more than 50%, more than half these people, if you actually biopsy it and look at their DNA, they have an activating mutation in PI3 kinase gene. Here is PIK3CA, a catalytic enzyme. Medicine has like weird names, so don't worry about it. It's the same thing as PI3 kinase. And then there are these kids, it's the same disease, it's Cloves disease, but it's actually a disease of the face. So basically it's the same disease. If you get it in the leg, it's called Klippel-Trenaunay disease. And then if you get it in the face, it's called Cloves disease. And then when the news of my discovery and my arrival came, I guess they profiled me at Michigan, MSU Today. Somebody actually reached out to me who was actually that discovery led to PI3 kinase enzyme as a personalized therapy for people with this venous malformation disease. So it's having a global impact. People are actually taking these drugs to shrink their malformations. And it turns out that somebody at Michigan State read about it, and she referred me to her husband. It turns out that the husband had a form of Cloves disease. He was actually perfectly fine until he was 40, and then something happened, and then he started having a swelling of his face, and he started bleeding from it. You could imagine if you had these too much veins, you tend to bite into your shakes and you bleed. And I looked at him at a Zoom meeting, and I wasn't sure it was working because his face was still swollen. So I asked him, it didn't seem to be working. So I said, is it working for you? He's taking that drug. And he said, absolutely, my tongue swelling is gone. Now we can talk, right? So it was very gratifying. I think if it wasn't for these people who actually mentored me, this would have never happened. This is a global impact. And so medical education has global impact and can take in many shapes. It's not just people who actually do the science. It's not just the surgeons. But it could impact could come from encouragement, through philanthropy, and also mentorship. So medicine is not just a bunch of doctors and scientists. It's everybody. Okay? Everybody will have global impact. I think these teachers and mentors probably had no idea that Cloves disease can be cured or treated through their impact, right? But it's linked. And here's another one. If you're from Michigan State, I got to talk about our kids. This is like single biggest thing to happen to Michigan State. Mona Hanna is a 2002 graduate of our medical school. She's an associate dean for public health. She's a pediatrician at Hurley over in Flint. But she's actually the heroine of the Flint water crisis. She's a hero. During the time 10 years ago, she was a villain, right? If you remember the whole thing. But she's a hero. They'll probably make a movie about her. If that's the case, but I'm not sure who's going to play her. But she is a singular person that really fought on despite gaslighting. She's a true hero of this story. But she's also founder of RX Kids. So it just came out yesterday. Pediatricians who exposed Flint's water crisis. Now she's fighting poverty one baby at a time. This is what we are, Michigan State. So what exactly is RX Kids? I'm a scientist, so I have to kind of walk you through what RX Kids is, okay? So let's talk about the science behind all this. So it turns out that in America, it hurts to have a baby financially, because this is pretty spectacular. Everybody who has a baby loses their income about 10%. And for people who are poor, in the lower middle class, that impact is even greater. Because nowadays, everybody's double income family. So if one person is out of a job, it really hurts their bottom line. It literally hurts to have a baby in America. Right? It hurts to have family in America. And poverty hurts. It takes many forms, but one of the biggest thing that hurts is education, because education takes investment. So if you're poor, you're not going to be investing in education. What's the consequence of that? And I know that at least in Baltimore, the single biggest thing of whether you're going to live long is actually education. Nobody really knows why, but education and poverty. But everybody thinks that it's because poverty, but education is a bigger driver of higher mortality and shorter life than anything else in this whole picture, even more than healthcare. All right? And so this is the background of what's going on. And she had this crazy idea. First time I heard it, I was like, that's silly. But what she's doing is she's giving out no strings attached cash support, no questions asked, no filling out forms. As long as you're expecting a baby, you're going to get $1,500 during pregnancy. You use it the way you want it, and you get up to $500 a month, up to $7,500 per child. And this is a program that she initiated through philanthropy in Flint. No income requirements. You could be rich and poor, doesn't matter. We're going to just give it to you. Take care of, use the money that you want to use. Because she knew that having a baby in America is costly. So we're going to just help you. And the beauty of it is she did not form it as a philanthropy. It's not like, well, you're poor, we're going to give you the money. She used it as a prescription. I'm going to write your prescription for this amount of money because you're going to need it. Right? So it's not an aid. It's not, I don't know what you call it. It's not welfare. It's a prescription. It's really brilliant. No bureaucracy. Nobody goes to check whether it worked or not. Nobody cares. No bureaucracy and less stigma. But the results are pretty spectacular. The reduced preterm birth by 18% and reduced low birth weight by 27%. Because if you have a little bit of extra cash, you could actually use it to take care of yourself. And when you're pregnant, taking care of yourself is taking care of the baby. All right? And postpartum depression by 14%. And then it turns out that being pregnant puts you at risk for losing your home. And it reduces the eviction by 91% in Flint. And they put in $14 million investment to 3,400 students, families during that time in Flint. And during that time, there was a net savings of 6.2%, driven mostly by cost of medical care. So even though they pumped in 14 million, they got back 6.2 back, net positive. And it's probably just the beginning. If you think about it, the kids who actually get a head start will get a head start in the future. So the return on investment will probably continue for the rest of that child's life. So what happened is that Michigan thought, both bipartisan, Democrats and Republicans thought, this is brilliant. This is like the best pro-life thing and pro-family thing you've ever seen. So Michigan just announced that they're going to put in $270 million to expand it throughout Michigan. It's really beautiful. And the science turns out to be pretty spectacular and robust. It's like stopping smoking, right? Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And so, can it go national? That is the next question. But can it go global? Because premature babies and poverty is everywhere. So just stay tuned. It's really, really, really exciting. And that's the single most thing I am proud to be a Spartan. And so I want to end with this virtual cycle of academic medicine. Michigan State at the center. Basically, our job is to educate, and our job is to discover and innovate. Find new things, right? Find new pathway for disease, and also educate future doctors and scientists. And that will lead to new insights and new discoveries that will improve human life, either treatment or a new way of curing people. And that's going to lead to medical advances, right? The doctors that you're going to go to hospitals are going to take care of you better, but also you're going to have better doctors who are trained in science. And when you have that, you're going to have healthier communities, right? And in America, like the rest of the world, healthy community is a wealthier community. And wealthier community is a community that grows. If you think about it, the fastest growing city in America is Grand Rapids. But it doesn't end there. We have to invest back in academia to complete this virtual circle. And that will also lead to drive entrepreneurship, a business that will have a global impact beyond Michigan. So this is back to the idea. We're all about intersections, bringing people together. And we're going to be at the center, and Spartans will. And thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hong. That was a really interesting presentation, and I hope it spurs some great questions. So before we open up to Q&A, I just want to say there is a microphone here, but I can also pass this around. And to get us started, we have Jerry Koyman, who is the Assistant Dean and the Chief External Relations Officer at MSU's College of Human Medicine, to get us started thinking about some of these issues.
Thank you. Thanks to KDL. Thanks to the World Affairs Council for hosting us tonight. You can see why we wanted to bring Chaz to Michigan State University. And he is really focused on building this in Grand Rapids, and we're really excited about that. We have more space for researchers, and he's doing his best, probably better than any of our chairs, to departments to bring more researchers to Grand Rapids. But I have a question for you. So everybody heard your bio, right? You were in Nashville with Vanderbilt. You were in Boston with Harvard. You were in Baltimore with the University of Maryland. You've seen their ecosystem in terms of medical education, clinical work, and research. You've now started to experience that in Grand Rapids. Can you tell us what you have seen thus far, since you're still relatively new to MSU and new to Grand Rapids? What have you seen that we've done well, and where do you think there's opportunity for growth?
I think one of the things that Michigan State does really well is community engagement, because we are actually, at the end of the day, a community-based medical school, and we're not like what you call our ivory tower, right? So we reach out, and I think their single best asset is the fact that you are part of Michigan State. We are a land-grant university. Our kids could never have happened at Harvard. Think about it. There are a lot of things that we can do that other universities cannot do, because we are at the ground, we're with the community, among the community, not just in Grand Rapids, but throughout the state. I think that's our strength, and I think as long as we stick to our core values, I think we're really strong. Thank you.
So all the undergraduates, most of the research facilities and graduate students of Michigan State are in East Lansing. How do you build an academic medicine program with being at such a distance from the institution's academics? Are you using like Calvin, Grand Valley, Aquinas as a resource, or?
That's actually great. I think that's one of the things that Jenny and Jeff Klump have really done well is that they're from Grand Valley State. So they have a lot of undergrads from Calvin University and Grand Valley in their labs. I think we need to formalize that relationship and make a continuity. In order to have a virtual skill, you need to start from high school students, college students, and whatnot. Graduate students, turns out that they like Grand Rapids. So it's easy to recruit to Grand Rapids. It's a city that sells itself. But undergrad campus is in East Lansing. But if we want to partner it, we need to develop a partnership with Grand Valley State. We have to develop a partnership with Calvin University, Hope College. I think that is something that we should take a note back, Jerry. Really, we got to really exploit the talents that we have here. I'm trying to recruit another person, and that also a person from Grand Valley State. So for me, like when I think about Grand Valley State, I go, that must be a pretty amazing undergrad institution, right? And so we gotta tap into that talent.
Yeah, and if I could, we actually do have relationships, especially around admissions for Grand Valley, Grand Rapids Community College, Calvin College, or Calvin University, and Hope College and Aquinas College, where we are getting a lot of their pre-med students coming now to Michigan State University, partly because of what's happened downtown. But we definitely have that relationship. And the headquarters of the medical school is actually here. The largest campus for Michigan State College of Human Medicine is Grand Rapids. And the fastest growing research at Michigan State in the health area is in Grand Rapids. And so we kind of are the headquarters here for the medical school. But we have those local partnerships which are vital. In Grand Valley, I think we get more medical school students from Grand Valley than we do any other university.
I have maybe a follow-up question. When you were writing about that connection between basic scientists and physicians, right? And how it's important to connect the two of them together. Can you expand on that and talk a little bit about what each group learns from each other in this collaboration and why that intersection is so important?
Boy, it's actually, it's sort of semi-intentional. People have to be together. You would think that with the internet, these kind of intersections will occur naturally. But it turns out there's nothing beats human interaction. And so have people who are scientists and doctors in the same room is the single best way that people actually get to talk. And so that's our challenge. Doctors are very busy nowadays. They have financial goals that they have to meet, right? And so the research could be the first thing to go. But if you have scientists nearby and a little bit of physician scientists who could actually understand what's going on, I think just putting the people in the same room, and even the patient advocates in the same room will be very impactful. You would think that these things happen naturally, like internet is everywhere. It's like, why do we need people to be together? But nothing beats being in the same room. And nothing beats actually sharing a meal and just talking about stuff. Because people are, these are all real people, right? We have dogs to take care of. We have elderly parents that we have to worry about, right? And so I think that shared interest is what we need to build. We need to build a critical mass in Grand Rapids of people who have a shared interest in curing diseases and kind of advancing the medical field.
Yeah, I'm just curious about how cuts to federal research money is impacting your, is it starting to have an impact?
Yeah, actually, the impact is actually greatest because if it's uncertain, right? So if it gets to a point where people start to give up, or I'm not worried about myself because I know that I could get money from somewhere, okay? What I do worry about is somebody coming out of college from Calvin University, have multiple options. Would you take a career where you could be wiped out on a whim of a politician? It's hard for me to tell them to go into that field, right? And so it's not the funding cuts per se. Funding cuts hurt people like me. But deeper cut is uncertainty that it creates to the younger generation. So what I really worry is that, if we look at maybe, I'm hoping I'm wrong, 50 years from now, China is #1 economy in the world, okay? United States is 3rd somewhere. And I hope that no historian can say, this is the moment when the United States start falling, okay? That's sort of kind of bad. So we need to actually counter that argument that science is still valuable, science is still worthy of a career that young people should choose. That is our existential crisis. How can I tell a young kid coming out of college, hey, do what we do, but boy, I just got my funding cut, I have to shut down my lab or let people go. That's very uncertain, right? So that is a cut that's actually deeper. That's an unintended consequences that could be even more harmful than actual cuts. The cuts will hurt people today, but the pipeline of uncertainty that's created will be lasting. So instead of having every society has a moment of inflection where it goes up, right? Florence was an inflection in the 15th century, right? A few centuries later in China, there was an inflection point where it became very inward focused. It went downhill during Qin Dynasty, right? It didn't decline this way, it just went boom, right? I hope that this is not our inflection point downwards. But if the way it goes, the United States is actually kind of weird. We can't do science without F1 visa from foreign. The best in the world comes to America to get their training, and a lot of them stay. That's actually a good thing. But when we turn a positive thing into a negative, then where are we going to get our talents? This could be it's not the money itself, but it's a drying up of talent, drying up of interest that's actually more worrisome for people like me. Thank you for your question. This is really is an existential crisis for everybody in academia.
Hi, how would you recommend Michigan State incorporate the concept of intersections in its medical education curriculum?
Boy, that's a great question. Right now, the medical education is so overburdened. Right now, you have to know everything. Like when I was in medical school, life was simple. All you have to do is remember Krebs cycle, because we didn't know that much, right? Now in medicine, you have to know so much, right? So how do we do this? I don't know. I think what we need to do is make sure that the medical students that come out of medical school remains curious, because there's so much we still don't know. And my favorite, I'm not even my favorite show, but if you watch Ted Lasso goes, be curious. Because if you're not curious, you become judgmental, right? A judgmental doctor is a kiss of death for that patient, right? Instead of finding out, hey, why are you sick? Why are you bugging me at 5 o'clock in the morning, right? But if you're not curious, doctors could easily become, Mrs. Jones again. She hates me, right? That's judgmental, right? As long as we inspire curiosity, why do we do what do we do? There's so many things that I did as a medical student, so many things I did at residency. If I told you that I'm doing that, if I did that 20 years, people would go, what? How did you do that? How could you have been so stupid? We didn't know any better, right? Medicine is a process of discovery, and medicine is a process, right? So a lot of the problem with modern medicine is that people with MD don't understand. The reason why there's so much vaccine hesitancy, there's so many controversy about mistrust in medicine, is because people with MD didn't understand in medical school that it's not just random sets of facts, but it's a process of discovery, right? We don't have instructions to life, right? So we're kind of figuring it out as we go, right? And we get better and better and better, right? Which means that every once in a while we're wrong. If we're wrong, we have to discard that wrong hypothesis and move on to the next thing. The beauty of Renaissance is that they were not afraid to make mistakes, but they were really hard-nosed about discarding wrong facts. They're very critical. And that our critical vision and curiosity is what we need to inspire in our medical students. Then you will figure out intersectionality. I was just talking to Hannah Mona. Writing this thing, I was really inspired, and I gave her a call. And she gave me a bunch of questions. It's like, why? How? And I was like, oh my God, I'm just a fan. I don't know, right? But I just realized that she's actually a very curious person. She asked me all these questions, like, gee, I wish I hadn't asked you that question. Like, I asked one question, she gave me like 10 questions back. I was like, I'm just a fan. I was like, never mind. But I think that was the secret sauce to her success. She was able to find intersectionality and bring it all together, right? And I think that's the beauty of Mona Hanna, is that she is the ultimate intersectionality. She's embedded in policy, embedded in the community, and politics. She's the ultimate politician. How in the world can you get Republicans, Democrats to support a $270 million project in such a partisan period right now? Right? That took some special kind of talent, right? So whatever she did, she just didn't the textbook, but she learned from life. So be aware and be curious. People aren't evil, right? If people are in your way, you go, gee, I wonder what makes that person ticked off. Then you could solve that problem.
I can't think of a better way to close the program than with that final answer. So let's give Dr. Hong another round of applause. So tonight's program will be archived on our YouTube channel in the coming weeks. So just search for World Michigan, and while you're there, feel free to subscribe to our channel. And for more information on our upcoming events, you can visit our website at worldmichigan.org. So please, everyone, thank you all for being here. Have a final cookie and a glass of cider before you get out when it's raining cats and dogs, and we'll see you sometime soon. Thank you.